Dear respected Thai, dear Sangha, today is June 28th in 2020 and we are in the Moon over Mountain Peak Meditation Hall in Deer Park. And today, as you might have noticed, we will experience a slightly different format of a Dharma talk. I brought in this projector and prepared some slides and some graphs and some Dharma spices. For today we will have a hybrid of scientific publication and a Dharma talk. For I have discovered that people listen more attentively to scientific publications than to Dharma talks, me included. And why is that so? I believe because when we listen to scientific presentations, we anticipate to hear something new, to have a discovery that we don't know about, and it will make us feel like, I didn't know that, or oh. While in a Dharma talk, it's all about the human being, the mind, everything we have inside, so we know it and we say, I know that, or I have heard that before already, like, oh, and we snooze off. So that won't happen today, I said I'm going to combine the two of them. And which is funny, actually. If you look, like many times when science discovers something, like this has been a spiritual law since ages. Like when science says, we recently have discovered that everything is interconnected. And like, but no, we say like, yo bro, we're teaching and practicing this since 2,600 years. That's not new. And they like, yeah, but now we can prove it. Good for you, good for you. It took you 2,600 years, but better now than never. And I'm not speaking against science. I love science. I guess it's more this experiment versus experience, right? While an experiment requires proof, an evidence or a result, experience itself is the proof, is the realization, the transformation or the liberation. So while we're experiencing something, we have the immediacy of an evidence. So that's what we're going to do today. And we're going to talk about, flattening the curve inside. So we know this term very well, and since the first time the COVID-19 wave hit us, we were trained and practiced flattening the curve, staying at home. If we have to go out, we wear masks and we social distance. We wash our hands many times and we don't touch our face. So we learned that pretty quick, but nobody taught us how to flattening the curve inside, because staying at home and doing all these things, finding ourselves in this new situation, requires a new mindset too, and has an effect on our emotional life. And while we were able to flatten the COVID curve successfully, mostly successfully, many of our internal emotional curves were spiking and surging. Let's have a look at this graph everybody is probably familiar with. Here we have, you see the laser pointer? I told you it's going to be professional. This is the number of cases, this axis of infections. While this is the timeline here, and then we see the curves. This line here is very important because that's what it was all about. This is the healthcare system capacity, means the number of beds available for patients who have to come in, the number of nurses available to treat patients, the number of ventilators, and. So if we would have not stay at home and doing all these measures, the COVID curve and the number of infections would have looked like this, and you see far over, and I mean we've been taught this, far over the capacity, and it happened too in some states and in some countries, and it was terrible. So we were trying to stay below that line. But at the same time, I'm saying that there were some internal emotional curves that were spiking similar to this. And let's translate this graph into an internal flattening the curve PowerPoint template. So now we have, instead of healthcare, we have our emotional system capacity. This is the same line. Let's say this is the intensity of our emotions. That's a timeline still. And here's the line, what we can bear emotionally before we get overwhelmed or carried away. And there we have already, wow, a big surge. That's a big curve. And what are the factors, I wanted to know, that lead to that emotional being overwhelmed? And I have listened to people and looked around and put my observations and what I've heard into this. So boredom was one. When we had to stay at home, we had to deal with ourselves, we could not have a social life as we are used to, we slowly got bored. Because not every one of us knows what to do with oneself when we are there, locked in our flat, in our apartment, in our house. And we cannot do the things that we could do, or we cannot escape suffering as we successfully used to do. So there's boredom coming up, a big empty space. Also loneliness is a big thing, especially in big cities. I heard from young people in big cities living alone in their little apartment, some windows, but it's not really bright, there's no balcony, nothing. They felt really lonely. And despite having internet and possibilities, there is something you feel disconnected from everyone. And this can be very challenging if you don't know how to find a home within yourself. And again, if you are not trained in mindfulness practice. From that loneliness also emerges worries, like what's going on in the world? Like, where are we at? Is that like Armageddon? Is that the end of the world? And you see your mental state, your emotional state is like declining or getting worse, and you're reaching or overstepping that emotional barrier here. So worries are kicking in. And together with worries, there's an impatience coming up. When this will be over, I cannot stand it anymore. I have reached my limit now. This is too overwhelming. I'm just gonna go out. I don't care. They say stay at home, but I will go mad here. I have to go out. Impatience for many things. And I think due to the impatience, there's a lot of anxiety too. Also, many people couldn't go to work. Many people lost work. There was a loss of money. So how will I be able to survive? How will I be able to feed my family? Also, you see people getting infected, friends, family, people dying in your city, people you know. That's really worrisome. And with that, is an easy soil for intolerance to come up. Like we're starting to blame people. Our capacity to be inclusive and to embrace everyone's view or perspective maybe shrinks. And we want everyone to wear masks, or we don't want anyone to wear masks because we think what we have learned or the insights we had during this time, they're the only one, and we know what is the right thing. And you know how many news there were out, so you really didn't know what is going on. And with this intolerance, there's an abuse taking place, abuse of many things, being it from consumption to physical abuse, sadly, in the family, within the families. If there was violence issues, anger issues already present, and being at home in a small space with the people you love, but you don't know how to embrace them and and to practice tolerance and patience. This can happen, verbal abuse. So that's very sad. And all because we are not able to come inside of us and find enough space and a place where we can be with all these factors, and where we can practice mindfulness and develop understanding, develop compassion for ourselves and for others. That looks pretty dark. It's not all that dark. There are also good sides to the lockdown, and we don't. I don't want to spare you these positive sides. You see, it's also a big wave. But let's see now. In this case, this is not the emotional system capacity. It's more like we're stepping out of our comfort zone. We're thinking out of the box. Some things that we would have not done without this staying at home and the new measures and the changes of our lives. So one thing, there was a great joy. I remember at the beginning people saying, how cool is that? I can just stay at home. I don't have to go to work. This is the coolest thing ever. I would have never thought this was going to happen. So there was the joy for all these new freedoms we discovered, which maybe led later into boredom, but that's another thing. Responsibility. In terms of empowerment, we were able to plan our own day. Not having to go to work meant also I don't have to commute. If you're a woman maybe and you put makeup, maybe you're a man and you have makeup too. You save that time because you don't have to put makeup to go to work. You save the commute, so you can sleep longer. You can first take care of the kids, make breakfast, have your own coffee, go back to bed before you work something. If you need a break, you do a break. You don't have to ask anyone. And there is this great responsibility, self-empowerment. I am the master of my day. That can be very freeing. So that was a new thing we discovered. Curiosity too, like seeing what's going on actually. We were kind of forced to stop, and we're able to look around and also seeing what are the others doing, what is going on in the world. With this curiosity there came a sense of exploration and discovery. Like you remember reading about the people learning how to make bread, and we have a brother who is making bread for us and doing granola and getting into new things. I heard from Sangha members they started to learn to play the guitar or do online courses, painting. So we grow. That was a real opportunity for us to grow. A connection was happening. Now a connection, how is that possible? We said there was this loneliness and now there's connection, but I see it fits because we were able, like with this responsibility, curiosity, to connect with ourselves. And maybe if we took it positive also with our family members. If there is a certain degree of mindfulness or only joy, we can make the best out of that situation. If a person of a positive nature, we will do the best out of it and connect. Maybe also with people we know that they don't have the conditions as we, and we connect. I heard of people, they would distribute food to poorer people and collect money for poorer families. So that's ways to connect with one another. And with that empathy arises. Empathy for the well-being of others. Seeing that so many people got sick, so many people died. I'm still alive and I'm okay. And I revere like life. I look at life in a complete different way. And with empathy comes compassion. Compassion for the world, compassion for people, the situation we are in. These are things that can have a positive effect on us. Now I found there are not only curves surging, but also some plunging. Like some basic human needs or values have been abandoned a little bit, let's put it this way, during these challenging times. And this one goes downwards. And there, for example, is moderation. Moderation, I said, with abuse, and I heard it a lot, like the fridge becomes the new hotspot of the apartment, of the house. And people go to the fridge like they go to their mailbox or their inbox, like every now and then, just to see if there's something new in it, you know. Like, but of course there's not. And if there's not, you say, oh, since I'm here, like I take this piece or I take that piece, and you're ballooning. People ballooned in these couple of months. But not only food, also other things. We talked about abuse. There are many things I can think of: internet, alcohol, smoking, whatever. So moderation was a thing that was very challenging for many people. And then self-awareness, self-respect or self-care, maybe because we had that responsibility and self-empowerment to do our own day. Maybe if we are not real needs, we would just let go a little bit of everything. There was a time when I went down to the monastic mailbox down the road outside of the monastery and pick up the mail for the brothers and sisters every morning. And I saw a neighbor walking, always at the same time. I came at the same time. And at least he was walking, because he had to stay at home, so he was walking in the neighborhood to keep himself fit. So that was a good self-awareness. But you could also see, with days and weeks passing, his beard grew longer, his hair grew longer, and at the first week or so he would still be like in jeans and a shirt. He would end up like with flip-flops and like just like sweatpants and a muscle shirt and this beard, and he looked really like worse and worse every day. And nothing against this neighbor. I would just want to illustrate what happened with us. So we let go a little bit of, because there's no need to do that. That happened. And with this, a sense of clarity, like a sense of clarity of what is important. And not regarding like essential or non-essential, because that was pretty much figured out with a staying at home order. What is an essential trip? What is an essential business for people and what not? Essential is really like life-sustaining pharmacies, supermarkets, even gas stations. But everything else, like which seems to be luxurious, like sport stadiums, movie theaters, many little shops that are not really essential, were closed. But what was essential for us? What is essential for our well-being and what is not essential? And here we can go back to all that what we have discovered today already. What have we done during the lockdown? Was that all very essential for me to feel well and to be at my best? So I think there was a lack of clarity in that, because again, a mindfulness practice helps to see what is helpful and what is harmful. And there we go, saying mindfulness practice, having a solid base, a solid foundation for our everyday being, knowing how to take care so I can stay on solid ground, and if news come in, try to shake me or shaking the world, I can stay firmly anchoring myself in my in-breath and out-breath and practice equanimity within to be solid. And clarity and solidity are also the two hamlets here in Deer Park, so I found that funny. Now there were other graphs, they are not like that scientific, but they come from people, for people, and they depict the relative importance of day-to-day things. And I found that in the internet. Have a look at this. The relative importance in 2020 so far, and it's a bit outdated, it goes until April. But you see, this is a life of ordinary people. To me, it's reassuring to see that coffee is a consistent force in everybody's life. It's like just unshakable. The use of cars went down drastically. You see, nobody needs a car when you're not allowed to go out. Therefore, abuse, moderation, you see the internet went up. Shaving, my neighbor, in March, that was around that time. But he came back, I have to defend him. He came back, like, I don't know when, up here. Alcohol, very sad. You see people, and there's no end to it. It continues. There is no understanding what I can do with myself And maybe suffering is coming up in that time because we're living close with our family. And conflict is coming up. And I don't know how to help myself, how to resolve conflicts, how to begin anew if I'm not familiar with a mindfulness practice. So I drown my worries in alcohol. And I know that very well. Many of us know that before we started to practice. It helps you alleviate like the suffering, but we all know it comes back. It's a very short-term solution. Toilet paper. That's, for God's sake, this is over. But it spiked so much, I guess everybody has toilet paper for the next year, so nobody buys it anymore. And sweatpants, here we go also. Which I found is a nice tendency, because why people shouldn't take it easy and like have lofty clothes and not this like very tight business suits where you cannot breathe. Okay, let's come back to our pure and blank graph. And hold on. I just wanted to say, when you live in California, as a Californian resident, you can't help but see actually this when you look at the graph. It looks like waves, right? And this is not what I made. I found that also in the web. So you see we have the same number of cases, the timeline, we have the healthcare system capacity, but here they took it as a wave because that's what every Californian knows. And here is a boogie board surfer, and he went on a big wave. And because he went over his surfing system capacity, he just will be washed over and wiped out. So if you want to stay safe below that line, you go and shelter in place, stay inside in the barrel. You stay inside the barrel and have a lot of fun and stay well. This is how a Californian graph looks like. Now, talking about waves and water, I made another connection, because emotions are often related to water or waves. You say emotions, they come in waves. And we said we can be carried away by emotions. We can be washed. They can wash over us. They can be powerful. But also the element of water is like feelings. It's like smooth, liquid, fluid. We relate that to it. So I wanted to know, what do spiritual authorities, how do they connect emotions with waves, or internal affairs with waves and water? And there we have one, it's an anonymous, this one here. Life is like the sea. We are moving without end, nothing stays with us. Just like the waves coming in and out. What remain is just the memories of some people who touched us as waves. So everything is impermanent. Nothing stays with us. It comes, it goes. And what stays with us are the memories of people, or of moments, or of emotions that touched us as waves. And we see here clearly, it comes, it will touch us, and it will go. Similar as we say in our practice, when we watch clouds in the sky. We say thoughts, feelings are like clouds in the sky. They come, they stay, and they go. Next one is from Jan Kabat-Zinn. John Kabat-Zinn says, you can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf. And that's very beautiful. So waves are part of life, emotional waves. Happiness, suffering, all these dualistic things, they come and they go. You cannot stop them, but we can learn how to live with them, how to play with them, how to grow from them and learn from them. And we can learn how to surf. This is a very impressive photo, huh? I hope he made it into the barrel and stays safe there. Next one, Mitch Albom. You're not a wave, you are a part of the ocean. Again, a step closer to our own teachings. Waves are just like notions. They come and go, but we are bigger than our notions. We are the element of it. We are the ocean. So that takes a lot of the power of these emotions from us. They cannot really wash over us because we know we are the ocean. These waves are a part of us, basically. Actually, these waves are a part of us, of the ocean. Now our own teacher, Tai, what does he say? He says enlightenment is when a wave realizes it is the ocean. And Tai uses the waves a lot, mostly when he explains the notion of birth and death. He says death and birth are like waves. The higher wave is life, we assume the lower wave is death, but we have to see the big picture. It is the ocean. And it also relates to emotions, to everything what we split up into a dualistic point of view. This or that, being or non-being, life or death, happiness or suffering. And when we see that these things are just memories that touch us, or that we cannot stop them to come, but they are actually a part of us, they are not us, and we are bigger than that, then we can awaken from that illusion. And that can help us not to be washed over and wiped out by news, by pandemic, by things that happen in our family, by overwhelming situations. I also like how these lotus flowers here, they stay safe in the barrel, you see? They know how to surf. And the last one, Ramana Maharshi, the wave said to the sea, and let's say ocean, the wave said to the ocean, could I be like you? And the ocean replied, it's easy, just settle down. And that's also so our practice, isn't it? We have to learn to stop when we are overwhelmed, when something big is happening to us, either super joyful and excited or super suffering and sad. We have to learn to stop before we get carried away by it and come back to our center, to our ocean, and be in touch with that vastness of ourselves, of our true nature. Well, let's settle down and let what we have heard so far sink in a little bit while we listen to a sound of the bell and come back to our true homes. Have you been while listening to the sound of the bell and coming back to yourself, have you been in touch with your ocean, with the vastness of your being, that you're bigger than all these little things that we find sometimes so important happening in our lives? It's important to keep that in mind. So now for me a question arises, hearing all this, seeing the surges, the overwhelming emotions, seeing that they come in waves. I'm asking myself, back to Dharma science. Okay, now we're going to investigate and analyze and doing hard facts. Enough with poetic quotes of spiritual teachers. Here we are. The question for me is, I built in, I coded in, do you say so, like an AI for my slideshow, and I have to call it probably. AI, can I have the question, please? Okay, there we go. Where do all these emotional waves arise from? And that's a legitimate question. Where do they come from? What is the source of these waves? So that would help us to see them maybe coming and being able to divert them or flatten them in time before they become overwhelming. Let's see. AI, can you please answer the question? Processing. There we go. Very bold. They come from consciousness. I would have said ocean, but it's kind of the same. Consciousness in its vastness and an ocean probably are not too far from each other. So what you see here is consciousness in a very simplified version. We know the circle that Tai draws when he explains consciousness. So here the lower part is the store consciousness, where all seeds, we said these all factors, values, mental formations are present within us, inside of us, in a dormant state, like happiness, suffering, joy, impatience, anxiety, anger, hope. All these things, mindfulness, they are all in there. We call them seeds. We call them seeds because they are dormant, but they can come up into our mind consciousness when they are watered. And again, that's why they are seeds. When you water seeds, they will sprout and then they will grow bigger. So they come from that store consciousness, they grow into our mind consciousness, and we become aware of it more or less, depending on our mindfulness level. Now, while we're talking about seeds, there is one popping up, by the way. Wonder what kind of seed that is popping up? Mindfulness. Isn't that cool, huh? The seed, we're talking about mindfulness here, and there is a seed of mindfulness popping up in our store consciousness. I guess there's so much mindfulness here in this room that this seed just manifested. But there are more, as I said, there are many more. Let's just have a look at a few to illustrate it. There is, as we saw, a seed of impatience. There is a seed of excitement too. Everything is, and there's even movement. Everything is present in our store consciousness. Boredom, curiosity. Or do we have anxiety? And there the seed of impatience sprouted. You see, it sprouted here, and I wonder, is already somebody bored inside here and is a little bit impatient for me to go on and come to the heart of the whole talk? Or so impatience came up to the mind. You see, it has been watered, and now it becomes present, and maybe you will feel it first with your being, like you tremble with your legs, or you look at your clock, like, wow, you do this, roll your eyes. That's how we see, even when you don't practice mindfulness, that there is impatience. You know, when you have an angry person in front of you and you say, are you angry? And you say, I'm not angry. No, the seed is there, but they don't see they're angry. So all these seeds can come up, and depending what kind of seeds they are and how many of them are watered, and I would say we invite or we water them and come up to our mind consciousness, we can get overwhelmed or not. If we have heavy seeds like boredom, anxiety, loneliness, anger coming up, and we don't know how to deal with them, this can be very, very hard to control them, and they rather control us. And that's why you also say the mind is a great, how do they say, servant, but I don't like the word, a great, let's say, partner or a workmate, but a bad boss. Don't give the mind control. Work with it, play with it, serve it, as John Kabat-Zinn said. We can learn how to serve. Because if there are too many of the wrong seeds coming up to the mind, you will be easily overwhelmed. But that's why we have the sun of mindfulness. If there is a seed of mindfulness sprouting, that's a great help already. And with this anger guy, like when you ask him, you angry? I'm not angry. If he would have mindfulness with him, there wouldn't be only anger, but mindfulness, the seed of mindfulness would be next to the sprouted seed of anger. So he would be angry, but he would realize he's angry. And then say, I notice that I am angry. You see the difference? I'm not angry. I notice there's a lot of anger in me. And I know that if I react now too quickly or act, this can harm others or worsen the situation, can even harm myself. So I better be be quiet and calm down, settle down a little bit. This is the power of mindfulness. And this is how it works. So we basically select, and we have the power to water our seeds, because all the seeds are there. And even if we see, because of some factors, some seeds that are pulling us down are taking over, as practitioners, we will be able, having the seed of mindfulness within us too. Everybody has the seed of mindfulness, not only practitioners. Sorry, everybody has it. But maybe as a practitioner you know it, and you can come back to it and water it when you see, oh, this becomes overwhelming, I want to invite some mindfulness into it. And you can deal with situations much lighter. You will know what to do and to take care of yourself and have that solidity, the clarity and the solidity we were talking of. So hearing that they can be watered and come up, for me, raises the question, how do these seeds exactly grow? Like, how are they watered? And we said we can water them, but how is that happening? If we can understand that, that would be very empowering. And that's easy too. They need food to survive. The Buddha said everything what lives needs food to survive. And in our Buddhist teaching, therefore, we have the 4 nutriments. The 4 nutriments are 4 ways of how we are taking things in, of how we consume things that have an effect on our well-being, because it waters these seeds. It feeds these or these seeds, depending on what we eat. And we want to look into that shortly. Just explain them shortly. There are whole talks from very eloquent brothers and sisters who gave whole talks on the 4 nutriments, because it's a big topic. There are even some siblings give talks on one talk on each of these 4 nutriments. So if you want to go deeper, I recommend you to watch these. The first nutriment is edible food. Now you might say, like, how can edible food have an effect on my well-being, like on my mind, watering my dormant seeds? In German there is a saying, and I will say it in German because it rhymes and I like it. Du bist, was du isst. Du bist, was du isst. Anybody understands? Yeah? You are what you eat. And you don't say that in English, but I think there is something similar. What you eat, you become, right? Or something. You have a saying like that. What is that? You are what you eat, huh? So we know that. And why is that? Why are we what we eat? Does that mean, like, if I eat pork, I'll become a pig? Or if I eat chicken, I'll become a chicken? That's ridiculous. It's not that easy. But consider that we are made by elements. Food is made by elements. So whatever we eat, we know, we put it in our mouth, it comes into our digestive system, and it dissolves, and it becomes finally our body. Proteins become enzymes and hormones, fibers become cells and structure, carbs, sugar, they become energy. We become what we eat. And we are not really aware of it. When I look around and see what we are eating, we just care about this little sensation happening here in the mouth, like the taste or the fragrance of the food, like burger, pizza, ketchup. Great, like tastes so sweet. But then it goes down and nobody cares anymore what's happening. Maybe we're overloaded with sugar. We don't have nutriments at all. And we will have to spill it out and flush it out altogether again because the body cannot use it. So what we eat is very important. We shall feed our body and feed seeds of things that we consist of. So our body can build on that and grow with that and sustain life with this food. And in that terms, we are what we eat is very, very true and very deep, because it gives you the perspective of not just being here like and having your favorite food, that's all the mind, but you eat for the body, you're actually feeding the body. Another point is like how we eat. how do we eat? Most people, like when you're in your working life, you eat in a quick break. Maybe you still work on something while you put things in your mouth, or you read the papers, or you scroll, or you text, you drive, you walk. Here in the monastery, we take our time to eat. We have 3 bells, we read the 5 contemplations about eating in mindfulness, and then we eat in silence so we can be really present for our food. Because we have chosen also what we want to eat. We want to choose that what we eat are the same elements that our body consists of. And why shouldn't I not be there when my body becomes the food? You know, when the food becomes us. This is like a wedding. This is like a holy, a sacred moment. Like when what we eat, we take something in and this becomes us. I want to be there when this happens. This is really sacred in a way, very crucial. And not like just stuff it in and I don't even remember what I ate a minute ago because I'm so somewhere else. And another point is, how much do we eat? You know, I think our species, we are the species that eat the most. We are eating all the time, and then this junk, basically, we're stuffing it in. And I also guess because what we are eating is not according to what our bodies really need. We need to eat more to get the level of nutrition that our body really needs to grow, to sustain, and to thrive. And we have problems with feeling hungry. If we feel hungry, we have the immediate need to put something into our body just to get rid of that feeling, because it's not a good feeling, it's unpleasant. We don't want that feeling. We rather feel stuffed and tired than hungry. But if I look like here in the mountains in Deer Park, the coyotes, the snakes, they are not often stuffed. Most of the time, many animals are actually hungry. Many people around the world are actually more often hungry than they feel stuffed. And it's a state which doesn't have to be pleasant if we are able to look inside of us and saying, okay, what is happening here? Activating the seed of mindfulness, saying my stomach is doing this and this is contracting. My body is trying to digest, and maybe my stomach is so big and now it feels empty, and it just called my stomach because I'm talking about it. I feel a little bit hungry, I haven't had breakfast today. But it's a sensation, it's interesting to observe. You know, it's not necessarily like, I feel hungry, I need to eat. But we come also to that later, how we often quickly react before we actually stop and look into it and are curious about what is happening here. So that's edible food. What are we eating, and how are we eating, and how much are we eating? The second nutriment, sense impressions. I think everybody knows we can eat with our senses, our eyes, our ears, our nose, taste, and with the body, the touch. When we watch movies, when we are on the internet, when we have magazines, books, games, we say even conversations, is all food. The content of the conversations, is it helpful, is it harmful, is it inspiring, is it sparking hope and trust, understanding, or is it criticism, blaming, judgment? Has all an effect on our well-being and waters certain seeds within us, which when we water them too much, they will arise in our mind, and there we go. And then we feel bad, or we become overwhelmed. And psychosomatic, we call this. When we don't feel well for a longer time, our body also becomes sick. So sense impressions, we have a great power in choosing our food and the nutriments in this food. And it's similar, what we eat with our senses, we become. So choose your nutrition well. The third nutriment is volition. Volition, also called aspiration, intention. And for me, the easiest and funny way to understand volition is you want to close your eyes. Close your eyes and go back when you were 5 years old and imagine, what did you want to become when you were 5 years old? And I love to see some smiles here. Was it like a doctor, an astronaut, an actress, a lawyer? What did you want to become? And if you have something, now close your eyes again and think, why did you want to become that? What did you see as a 5-year-old? We don't tend to analyze it much, but we have an image and an intention of that, what we see, and that sparks something in us. That's water some seeds. And this is probably when you see what you were in touch with your dream job, then you probably know what your volition is. When I was 5 years old, I wanted to become a trash man, because the trash guys, when they came, and I was so in awe of that guy who was standing in the back of it, holding one hand at the truck, and they drive down the road, and I would wave, and they would wave back, and he was so free, and he was so happy. And because I was always there when they came, he allowed me also to stand there where he stands. I was standing at the back of the truck, going on the truck with one foot, holding myself, and waving to my neighbors. I was the proudest kid in the neighborhood. The same with a chimney sweeper. When the chimney sweeper came, I was allowed to go with him up to the roof, and we would be there on the roof. You're above everything. Like, he's this cool black-looking guy, and you see all your neighbors and friends very small down there, and you would wave at them, and they would wave back. So for me, it was freedom and happiness. That's what I saw. Now I became a monk. But my volition, I think, is still there. So what do you want to become? You want to become happy? You want to become rich? What do you want? Do you want to help others? You want to be beautiful? No judgment. You have what you want to become. This is our volition. And our volition will also has a great influence on what we do and how we behave and what measures are we taking. Like, if somebody wants to become the box heavyweight world champion, then he has to hurt other people, right? But if I want to become a monk, then I have the volition, the intention not to hurt other people. So depending, when I want to become rich, the downside is that if I want to make sure I'm the richest person, then I have to make sure nobody's getting there where I am at the mountaintop. So keeping other people down. This is what volition is, and volition has a great influence on our seeds in the store consciousness. And the last one, the big one, consciousness. We already heard about it. The easiest and the most difficult to explain. Whole talks on it. I'd say it's like simply the mystic mother of all existence. Consciousness is like the ocean. Muji, another spiritual teacher, there's another quote. He said, trying to explain consciousness with a mind is like trying to illuminate the sun with a candle. Because the mind comes out of consciousness. How can the mind possibly explain this, what is evidently like super huge? And Ramana Maharshi, which we saw before, he also mentions the mind is consciousness, which has put limitations on it because of all these seeds, because of our preferences, genes. So the mind springs out of consciousness, but is much smaller. So we should not even try to explain consciousness. These are the things that we can do, you see, to water selectively seeds in our store consciousness and invite them up to our mind consciousness, to live a healthy, wholesome life, happy, and sometimes it needs suffering, but we are the gardeners. We are the gardeners with a water can who can water seeds which we see appropriate in that very moment. And if we have the seed of mindfulness lit lit up like here, we are on a very safe side. So this is where these seeds come from, their source, where their source is and what we can do. Let's listen to one sound of the bell and let that sink in. So now we know that these emotions, the curves inside, have an effect on us and can be very powerful, and we know where they come from. So the next question would be, how do these seeds influence our emotional curves inside? How do they influence? What do they do exactly? And we want to ask our AI, how do these seeds influence our emotional curves inside AI? Processing. What does it say? No seeds or emotional curves detected. Please consult human. Incredible. I'm afraid we reached the limit of science here. It seems to need, it asks for a human, so I guess what we need here is good old human suffering that cannot be handled or experienced by science. It needs human suffering. Luckily, I have enough. I have a lot of human suffering, so I will try my best to take over. Thank you, AI. And give it a try to show us how these seeds influence these emotional curves inside. As we said, they come from consciousness. So we want to start there too. Do that circle. Now leave it a little bit open, you will see why. So here on the left side, I tilted it a little bit because we need, you will see why. This is the store consciousness, and here's the mind consciousness. And within the mind consciousness, we have our sense organs, which are consciousnesses themselves. So we have the eyes, the ears, we have the nose, we have the tongue, and we have touch, the body. And these sense organs, sense consciousnesses, they make contact with an object outside of us. That's here, is the object. And let's take a common example, one that I heard of. Let's see, the object is a man on the street not wearing a face mask. And you see that man with your eyes. And this waters seeds of anger in your store consciousness. And they sprout and pop up in your mind consciousness. And you really get angry. Are you angry? I'm not angry. But you will yell at that person. How can you be so irresponsible? Like not wearing a face mask. Did you hear everybody needs to wear a face mask? Are you angry? I'm not angry. You know, this is what anger can do. And here it looks like anger is triggered by someone, and we can make someone responsible for having watered our seeds. But this is not really true. The seeds, we said, are within us, and we select, at least we have the power to select which seeds need to be watered and which seeds are not helpful in that moment to be watered. So let's start from the inside of us. We have a seed here. Let's take loneliness. Loneliness, we are sitting in our big city, small apartment, and we feel so lonely. We've been here, staying home for a while now, and we are so lonely. And then we remember this piece of cheesecake in our fridge. This is our object, the piece of cheesecake. So now we see the piece of cheesecake, we probably smell it, and we can taste it. So three sense consciousnesses make contact with that object. Now is the interesting part. As soon as you make contact to an object, there is a division happening. And the mind immediately differentiates between if it feels it as pleasant or if it senses it as an unpleasant feeling. So there is a sense organ, there is an object, and because of the object there is a feeling arising. And this will go to be a pleasant feeling or an unpleasant feeling. Now in our case, feeling lonely and remembering the cheesecake is a very pleasant feeling. So there's that moment, there's this one crucial moment, and here is a zone, a field. This is a very crucial field, a mystic field. So here we make contact with the cheesecake. It feels very pleasant, and it's very easy to make an attachment. This is my piece of cake. I really like it. And because now we went into this direction and it feels so pleasant and we're attaching to it, we're craving. We are developing a craving. But this cheesecake is also due to impermanence and has only a limited material capacity, and is not sure if it really will alleviate our sense of loneliness. So when we have eaten the piece of cake, we might still feel lonely. And that causes that we don't get what we want. We tried it, but we don't get what we want. You can't always get what you want. And because of that, there's suffering. Here we go. Suffering. And because we suffer, we are so easy to look at. What do? We go back to the mind. We go through our sense organs. We look for an object. We try to find something pleasant in it. We attach to it. We crave. It will end. We don't get what we want, and we suffer. So we create a cycle, a vicious cycle, or samsara. The same is true with unpleasant feelings. It's the same thing. Let's stay with the loneliness. We feel lonely. It pops up, let's say here, and then there is nothing. We look around and there is nothing but emptiness in our apartment. We don't see the beauty, we don't see the flower, we don't see our certificate from our graduation certificate, we don't see anything nice. It's just like everything. So our flat, we see it, maybe we feel it, and we hear nothing. So some senses are involved. Hit the object, and the moment we realize it, we come into this magic fields, and it pushes and it pulls. Maybe it's not sure yet, and this is so unpleasant. This is so unpleasant. And what we do is we create an aversion against it. Very dualistic way of thinking. And if we have an aversion for something, we want to reject it, push it away, rejecting it. But we can reject it as much as we want. The loneliness is still there. And as up there we didn't get what we want, here we get. But what we don't want. We get what we don't want, which is just as much suffering as the other side. But because we are clever and we know what to do, we go back to the mind right away, look for another object, go there, maybe find it unpleasant again, averse, reject, don't get what we want, we suffer, we go back. We go back and look for an object. Maybe this time it's pleasant. We attach to it, we crave, but it's not there all the time. And it goes away. I don't get what I want, I suffer, I come back to the mind. And this goes on and on and on. And you come in, you find it pleasant, you attach, you crave, it's gone, you come back to the mind. You look for an object, it's unpleasant, you reject it, you suffer, you come back to the mind. You look for an object, you see it, it's an infinite aid. It's like, this is samsara. This is samsara. Is that the end of the story? I hope not. There is a way. There is a way that leads out of suffering. And this space is right here. This is the space, the field of fate here, the zone that determines our freedom and our growth, our well-being. Because if we get in touch with an object and these feelings, pleasant, unpleasant, start kicking in, and my mind is determining based on experience, wishes, preferences, suffering, which way we want to go. You know, you're in that zone and it starts pulling and pushing and pulling, and there's electromagnetic static, and you're like, we know that feeling. When you're torn and you are somewhere, or you might know this is so great or this is so bad. But as practitioners, we stand there solid and we come back to our breathing and we observe what is going on. And we are in touch with that suffering. We are in touch with this pleasant feeling, with a happiness. Or we are not, because we are torn. But we can be with it. And sure enough, we will come out of the field with what we call mindfulness, concentration, and insight, MCI, which means we have to stop, embrace what is, and not run away and run after the cheesecake or run away from the empty space in our apartment. Embrace and look deeply. Look deeply. Get inside. And get liberation. So this is the way that leads out of samsara right into freedom. Right into freedom. And it takes a bit of practice and training, because there is tension in this magnetic field. There is unpleasant feelings. There is pleasant feelings. And maybe we have a tendency for one or the other. Interesting is also that sometimes what you would consider unpleasant, some people really like horror movies. You know, you would really say, this is an unpleasant feeling, and you're in here and you determine it as unpleasant, but then you go up here and make it an attachment to it, and you really water these seeds of fear within you, or bad news, and you want more and more, but you don't get it and you suffer again and you end up there too. And there are very pleasant feelings which can end up in an aversion. Love, for example. How can a pleasant feeling lead to rejecting and getting what we don't want? Once, a long time ago, I broke up with my girlfriend. And that's a whole nother story. I admit it was not nice. But the moment I told her and I left, she said, you know what your problem is? And that's the moment, you know, like when you like, okay, let I just say it. You say, okay, you will probably tell me what is the problem with me. Please tell me. And then she said, you don't allow yourself to be happy. I said, boom. Wow, that really struck me. it hit something in me. It touched something where I thought, I have to sit with it. I have to let that sink in. So I loved her in a way. She loved me. But there was something within me that I didn't trust that happiness. I didn't trust all that. And I created an aversion against it. I said, there must be something wrong. I'm getting myself into trouble. When this becomes a long-term commitment, I don't want to be there. I want to stay free. All these ego things that kick in. And I rejected her. And I got what I don't want. I got out of love. I got all out of being loved because of that. I didn't know how to water my seeds. So the very, very moment where we can have the power to direct our fate, like it's here in that field of fate. I like that expression. And how do we practice there now concretely? How can we practice there so that we can put into practice all these things that we have learned about the waves, about where they come from, how they influence us, where we can end up, and we can also go through and step into freedom. But what is happening here? And once again, I got to go there. Thai uses the metaphor of the mother taking care of her baby. And I know, now is that moment again when you say Dharma talks. Like, I know that, I have heard that already. And also those of you outside who have commented on that specific teaching, and you said, I cannot identify with it because I had a very challenging, if not non-existent relationship to my mother. And for me, this is just like so way off. I cannot relate to it. Thank you for this. This helps a lot to understand and also to emphasize and maybe answer why Thai always chooses the mother taking care of a baby. And it's not about a mother. It's more about an energy we have inside of us. So the mother is just a metaphor for, you see, the mother had her baby inside of her, carried this baby 9 months inside of her. So they were one. What the mother ate, the baby became. Like what you eat, you become. They were one. And she was taking care, and she knew this. There was a lot of mindfulness too. So the moment when the baby gets out of her body, it looks like in a relative dimension that now we have two beings. But for the mother, this child is still her. There is no second being. This baby is still her. They inter-are. You cannot take the baby out of the mother. When the baby suffers, the mother suffers. When the baby is happy, the mother is happy. There is no baby. There is no difference between her and the baby. Right? And if the mother doesn't work for you, that's okay. It's just to understand where it comes from, that there's no discrimination, this inclusiveness, this non-discrimination of two separate entities. It is about a seed within us, the seed of love, unconditional love, and the realization of inner being with others, which we perceive as others. And that's another point, this unconditional love. So if you have difficulties with your mother, choose, if you have one in your life that had that role, family, friends, partners, who were always there unconditionally for you, who saw you not as another person, but as part of themselves, who could never do harm to you. And vice versa, you too. Or, if there's no person in you, like look at it as an energy within you. Because at the end of the day, when we have an overwhelming emotion, we are practicing with ourselves. So there is literally no other person outside of us. So this metaphor is to see that these seeds are in us, and we are learning to get in touch with this seed of unconditional love, inclusiveness within us, to be able to stop, embrace, look deeply. That's why we take the mother. But to make it a bit more interesting, I will go a step further, and we don't take the mother and her baby. So time passed and the baby grew bigger and it got a sibling. So now we have a mother and her 2 children. There's the mother. And here are 2 children. We come to a new dimension. So one child is called pleasant feelings and one unpleasant feelings. Or let's say pleasant happiness and suffering. Give her some feet too. So now the mother is with her kids, having happiness at one hand and suffering at the other hand. And it is in touch with both. They are both her children. They are not separate entities. She feels what they feel. The happy child is happy, the mother is happy. The suffering child suffers, the mother suffers. So this is our middle way. This is what we as practitioners, that's our path. So when the happy child says, I want to go, Mom, over there's a Ferris wheel, there's a playground, the ice cream truck, let's go there, have fun. I'm so happy. The mother follows the child, but is still in touch with a suffering child in the back. It could say like, okay, happy child, you go off and play on the playground and I will take care of my suffering child. The mother would not do that. The mother knows that the happy child is so excited and so full of joy that it probably won't look both ways when it crosses the street or make friends and just go home with them or get lost at the Ferris wheel or I don't know what can happen. So it can never let go and abandon this child, even if there's a lot of happiness, because this can be overwhelming. And the other side, the suffering child, you know how often you see children like crying and they're sitting at the floor and you have to drag them like a dog to the vet. They don't want to go anywhere. They just want to go home or are crying. And the mother is in touch with this. But would she ever let go of that child and say, you cry and I will go to the Ferris wheel with happy and then later we pick you up? You won't do that because you don't know what this kid can do in its despair. It might run off and want to run home and also runs over the street, doesn't look, or gets lost and it becomes dark. As a mother, you would never do that. And that's what we're saying. If you can develop that energy within you, that unconditional love, that whatever we feel, sad or happy, if we suffer or we are well off, we are always there for both our children, because we know there are 2 children living within us, in our chest. And they come in waves, and all what stays are the memories. But we are not these. We heard all this. So this is how we can really put it into practice and see that our role is the one of a mother, I have to say it again, of a caring person, of that energy. So with this, we have the ability to take care of ourselves. We have the ability to take care of our well-being at any given moment, in the here and now, any given moment. And that was my message to you, that we are empowered at any time, and sometimes we think we don't, or we are not because it feels so bad, or we are so happy that there is no need for it. I hope I could explain that we have to be in touch with both energies within us, because they are not 2, it's only one, and this is us. And if we are not able to be the mother, have the capacity to have space for both of them, we will suffer. I want to conclude here and summarize what we have heard today. So first thing maybe, don't wait for science to prove things that we can experience inside of us. We can experience right here, right now. Second, we are not waves. Our emotions, our thoughts might be waves. People might be waves that we encounter. but we are the ocean. Third, be mindful what you're taking in, what you're consuming. What and how you're taking it in, and how much of it are you taking in. Fourth, be aware what you're looking out at. What you're looking out at. How do you say? Be careful what you wish for, because it can bring you into samsara. Fourth, be the careful, or go and get in touch with that loving energy within you that loves you and that cherishes you in good times and bad, until death do you part. Amen. That's it. Take care. Thank you.